What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with another podcast. What's going on in pop culture right now? Got a lot of stuff to get to here. A bunch of music. New album from Justin Timberlake, Kacey Musgraves, Tierra Whack, Flo Milli. A lot of different things to get to with that. Some good, some bad. Also had to talk about the conclusion of Apple TV Plus's Masters of the Air and what worked and didn't work about that series. And of course, it's time for the early 2025 Oscar predictions, trying to forecast ahead and see what movies might be in the mix a year from now. So of course, subscribe, youtube.com/nostalgiapod, linktree.com/nostalgiapod. Get the pod any way you can. See the links below. Get the Spotify playlist. Let me know it's good. Let's get into it. What's up, welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Flo Milli's third album, Fine Ho Stay. Flo Milli, rising rapper, has made a lot of noise the last few years, and this is the third instance in the Flo Ho trilogy, following, of course, her 2020 debut, Ho Why Is You Here, and 2022's You Still Here Ho. Now we're with Fine Ho Stay. The best thing about Flo Milli's third album, Fine Ho Stay, is that Flo has diversified her sound as an artist and now really stands out as one of the preeminent rappers that we have. You know, she's one of many rising female MCs we've got these days. Being a female rapper is no longer a novelty, and Flo Milli has already kind of made a lot of noise with some pre-existing hits like Beef Flow Mix and Roaring Twenties, Conceited. You know the songs. But Flo Milli, with this third album, and particularly her first on the chart on the top 100, Never Lose Me, that song in particular really shows that Flo has more melodic stuff to her sound. She can dabble in some R&B. She can find some different pockets. She's not just going to be a punchline rapper, even though she's really great at that. And I think the fact that Flo has expanded what she is, what her music means, it's a great sign that she's going to be around for a long time, because she was already really good at what she, had been known for. And the first song on this project, Understand, is a great example of that really energetic flow from Flo. But a song like Toast, which is just so sing-songy, it just feels so different from her. So I'm just really excited that even on, again, a pretty tight project from her, this is 14 songs, 33 minutes. It's short and sweet, but there's just enough variety on this that I think we can really say that Flo Milli is progressing. Flo Milli is taking that next step. And that's just really exciting because, the rap world, I think, really needs this right now. It's been a little bit stale on the new artist side of things. And the fact that you're getting a so very young, in her early 20s artist able to diversify what she can do and contribute even more, it's great that she's being rewarded by that with her song Never Lose Me. And to get such high profile guest features on the remix to Never Lose Me, SZA and Cardi B. SZA had been teased and hinted at, Cardi B a complete surprise, and both of them really bring it. It's also just an amazing cosign for her as is a rising rap star, female star in pop. Another song I liked was Got the Juice. I think the flow is very fun. The horns on the production sound really cool. I saw some people comparing that to like a Lotto song. Honestly, I definitely hear it. I think if anything, there's anything to really criticize is that some of those songs that you expect of the traditional, typical Flo Milli song, you get some of those on this. And, did I hear a banger in her old school sound to the degree of Beef Flow Mix? No, I didn't. But we say that about a lot of artists once they've released enough music, so it's not the biggest deal. To me, the diversification from Flo Milli is the main takeaway. And yeah, I'm just really happy that she's finding that success and being rewarded for taking some chances and not keeping it safe, sticking to what she already had made her bones on and been most successful with. So very exciting. Flo Milli, I remain a fan. Happy to see the success. Let me know, what did you think, though, about Flo Milli's third album, Fine Ho Stay? Did you appreciate the risks and changes she took? What was your favorite song? And for more rap reviews, more music reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up, welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Tierra Whack's debut album, Worldwide Whack. Tierra Whack back with her follow-up to her breakthrough mixtape, Whack World, way back from 2018. But of course, Whack World immediately put Tierra Whack on the map. Tierra Whack out of Philly put her on the map because that was one of the most ingenious, unique rap projects really we've ever heard, certainly in recent memory. A 15-track, 15-minute album, each individual song, only a minute long, each with its own music video, wildly differentiating the sound, the genre, and the visual aesthetic of the videos from song to song. One of the most engaging and worthy of revisitation albums I've ever heard. And again, it's only 15 minutes long. And of course, since then, a lot of hype about Tierra Whack, XXL Freshman, where we can get that full length album. We got 3 of those EPs, in 2021, which I thought were interesting for what they were. But nonetheless, we wanted that full length. And we finally got it with Worldwide Whack. And I have to say, probably unsurprisingly, Tierra Whack's debut album, Worldwide Whack, is more conventional, more straightforward than Whack World. That was probably to be expected. It's probably unfair to expect her to continue to be so unique with her album construction moving forward. So I'm not going to levy that as like a negative about Worldwide Whack. I would say that I think some of the songs don't quite feel as unique to me. I don't know if there's quite as much ingenuity with these songs, but what remains with Worldwide Whack is that Tierra Whack is really adept at switching up genre, switching up sound, switching up flow, and is really a quite talented person, unsurprisingly, of course. But she can really do a lot. And even if some of these songs are kind of straightforward, I think that's okay because she's still really switching up what she's doing over the course of the album runtime. And for an album that's, less than 40 minutes long, I think there's still a lot here, and it's really a lot worthy of revisitation. So Worldwide Whack, I think it's a success. I think there's definitely some highlights on here. I think the song 27 Club, one of the early singles, definitely stands out. The song X stood out to me as well. Definitely some Black Skinhead vibes from the production. Chanel Pitt has some really engaging bass, almost like a triplets flow from Tierra. Track 1, Mood Swing, very melodic, almost kind of like a sung flow from her. Burning Brains, I thought was very smooth. Movies, I thought was very groovy. Probably one of the catchiest songs on here. There's certainly a lot to take away from this. Difficult, probably the most introspective lyrics from Tierra Whack on Worldwide Whack. In general, the song 27 Club, as the name might suggest, Tierra Whack was going through some stuff, thinking about some dark thoughts, and she's kind of getting into that at points on this album. And yeah, even if the double meaning of some of the songs isn't quite as profound and pronounced as it was on Whack World, again, I still think there's a lot to take away from this, and she remains one of the most unique artists we have in rap. And I would just love if she would stick around and be more present. I remember she had that feature on the Yachty tape a few years ago that really stood out just because you don't really get a lot of Tierra Whack features. It'd be cool if she was around a bit more. But nonetheless, I think there's certainly enough here for it to be, worthy of the wait. I would not like to wait 6 years again. So let's hope, 2.5 years if you count those EPs. So it's not been that long, I guess. Tierra Whack, I remain a fan. I hope she continues to see the positives in life and want to keep going because I think a lot of people would really love to hear more of what she puts out in the world because it's unlike most other people's music. So yeah, let me know, how'd you feel about Worldwide Whack? What's your favorite song? And for more rap reviews, more music reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Kacey Musgraves' 6th album, Deeper Well. Kacey back with her first album since Starcross back in 2021. And of course, it's been some time since Kacey Musgraves really rose up beyond the Nashville country industry mainstream and has kind of blossomed into a broader national pop figure, international pop figure. Of course, really breaking through with that 2018 album Golden Hour, winning the Grammy for Album of the Year. Kacey, of course, just won a Grammy for her collab with Zach Bryan. I remember everything just 2 months ago. Kacey Musgraves is pretty established at this point, and I was a little curious on what exactly Deeper Well would be because, of course, Golden Hour at the time, of course, was a celebration of a relationship album, but of course, introducing everyone to Kacey's sound beyond traditional country and country folk, where she gave a lot of disco and some pop leaning stuff. And of course, the follow up to that, Starcross, ended up being the Divorce album. So what would Deeper Well give us? Kacey Musgraves' 6th album, Deeper Well, is actually a retreat from the pop mainstream that she's largely gravitated towards since leaving traditional country music behind. Deeper Well is a lot more folky, it's a lot more understated, it's also, I think, just a lot less flashy. There's no nods to disco like a Slow Horse off Golden Hour. There's nothing so overtly pop melodic the way Breadwinner was on Starcrossed. Deeper Well is really just Kacey doing an album about her in terms of honoring her self-worth and her own self-love. And I think this just, it's very insular, this music, and certainly leaning back into the folk. To me, it's less exciting overall. I just don't know if there was enough here to really latch onto, but there are definitely some highlights. I think the song Cardinal immediately stands out for being something very much in the vein of Fleetwood Mac, which should be a great joy to many people who listen to that song. Also, I thought the song Anime Eyes was pretty catchy as well. But overall, this is just a quieter record. And maybe to some people, this is what they want from Kacey, but I always really enjoyed when she would kind of go out on a limb with a unique song, like a High Horse. Those are the moments where she really stands out for being unique. And this, I guess it's just kind of one track. And if that's not exactly your vibe, like it isn't really exactly my vibe, there's just not quite enough here for me on Deeper Well. So yeah, I feel like I don't really have a ton to say on it. It's just, this is just a more folky, quieter Kacey album. There's just a lot less flashy elements to this album. And where this stands in the timeline of the Kacey Musgraves experience, from the early country stuff to the Golden Hour Starcrossed era, this definitely feels like the start of a new sonic direction from Kacey, because clearly this is where she wanted to take things. This is what she wanted to sing about, but she was very intentionally keeping it more insular. So I'm very curious what that means for the next Kacey Musgraves album. Where will she pivot back towards a more mainstream sound again? Who can say? But yeah, Kacey Musgraves, I do respect that she very much seems to go to the beat of her own drum and do her thing, and that's great, of course. So I'll be looking forward to the next album, even if Deeper Well didn't quite grab me the way I wish it did. But let me know, how'd you feel about Kacey Musgraves' Deeper Well? Did you like it more than me? If so, let me know why. And for more music reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome back, Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Justin Timberlake's 6th album, Everything I Thought I Was. Justin Timberlake, first album since Man of the Woods from early 2018, a long 6 years. Of course, Man of the Woods was a creative misstep, wasn't really a success commercially either. And of course, since then, Justin Timberlake has not had the best time in the public sphere. Of course, really coming back under scrutiny, public scrutiny, for his relationship to and his actions around and during, of course, the Janet Jackson controversy at the Super Bowl, and of course, Timberlake's much covered relationship to Britney Spears. Britney had said some things, some stuff came out in her memoir. Timberlake's kind of been raked over the coals for how he acted, and just more broadly how he was able to benefit and move and progress his career in a way someone like Britney Spears was not, and the difference in tabloid coverage of the two and things like that. So that's been going on, and Timberlake hasn't really helped himself all that much from some of his statements he's made, basically taking back a previous apology he had made that he did very recently with a on-stage introduction to playing Cry Me a River. Of course, we don't have to cover every moment of the past few months from Timberlake, but you get the idea. And at the same time, the single, Selfish, hasn't really hit after a solid chart entry, I guess. It hasn't really lasted, and there hasn't been a lot of social media activity or strong metrics regarding this Timberlake comeback. So I was kind of curious what this would be. If we reflect back on, I believe it was end of last year, Timberlake and NSYNC reunited, and they promoted the song heavily that they reunited for. Of course, that was a new song for the Trolls soundtrack that Timberlake has contributed to throughout the Trolls run of movies. And it felt like for the first time that Timberlake really needed NSYNC, really needed the boys to kind of help him, versus, of course, in the past when he went solo, Timberlake didn't need the rest of NSYNC with him, and he left them behind. But now it kind of feels like maybe that time has changed, the tide has turned, and he would like to lean on NSYNC a little bit more, and they in fact support him on another song on this new album. I would not be shocked if within the next year or so we hear news of the NSYNC comeback and subsequent comeback album, comeback tour, really take root, once Timberlake moves beyond the tour for this new album, just because I don't know how successful this new album is going to be for him in the grand scheme. Of course, Timberlake is a certified legacy artist, but I think now it's to the point where
he will be viewed as a legacy artist, because having two creative duds in a row really kind of takes you out of the pop interest. Unfortunately, Justin Timberlake's sixth album, Everything I Thought It Was, it's just not hitting. The bops are not here. What's most disappointing about this album is that the most successful songs about it just feel like obvious imitations of Timberlake's past success. Timbaland does return on this album, for example. Unfortunately, there's really nothing to recommend about this new Justin Timberlake album, because sonically, it doesn't sound like anything special. It just also feels kind of less inspired than his creative peak. We are so far removed from Future Sex Love Sounds. Lyrically speaking, we're also very much removed from some of the strong and sharp writing he gave us on the 2020 Experience. This is just a lot of rote music. Justin's vocals are often completely drowned in auto-tune in a weird way, as if he just discovered auto-tune, not really understanding some of the choices with that. And also lyrically, he's not giving us the introspection I think we would like to hear after all of the public beatdown he's taken for his actions around Janet Jackson and Britney Spears in the past. And if you're not going to give us bops, you're not going to give us hits and really fun, catchy stuff, then I'd at least like to hear you reckon with some of the past misbehavior. But he doesn't do that either. So there's just really nothing special about this album. There's a moment or two, but yeah, I mean, I don't think there's much to revisit. It's also quite the slog because this album is so long, well over an hour. Yeah, can't recommend it. As much as I'm an NSYNC fan, I wish I liked these new NSYNC with Justin songs more. The Trolls song last year and now Paradise off this album. It's nice harmony, you know. They sound nice together, but they're obviously no comparison to the great NSYNC songs of the past. But I really love NSYNC. I think they're the greatest boy band ever. You know, though their best songs to me are the best boy band songs. But yeah, I mean, it's just kind of a nice thing, you know. And if they do the comeback tour, I'm not going to be doing it hoping to hear the new music. And anyway, also like in terms of the features, you also have Fireboy DML on this album, one of the more successful and cool Afrobeats artists. It's kind of random as hell that Timberlake has him on his album. The song Liar, the song's just okay. Also on Sanctified, Toby Wingway, pretty solid, like, you know, rap verse on there. Some fun big guitars on that song, I suppose. But then there's just in No Angels, I thought was pretty catchy. But you know, songs like Infinity Sex, just a lot of groaner lines, like the sexual braggadocio from Timberlake. I guess it just doesn't really work to the same degree anymore as he's gotten a little older. I'm not sure. You know, it's funny to hear that because at least there's at least some bite or an attempt at having a bite in the way he never obviously tried to do with the Troll song. Can't Stop This Feeling, of course, a massive hit in Timberlake's catalog, but also such a vanilla, craven, boring, whatever song, right? He's not doing that with a lot of these songs, but at the same time, it's just whether the production's all mucked up like a song like Memphis, or just his vocals are just for some reason really messed with artificially. It just doesn't really come together. And maybe this would be a lot more successful if instead of 18 songs and 80 minutes long, it was maybe 9 songs and 45, perhaps. But yeah, I just think it's kind of a double whammy to not really genuinely reckon with a lot of the criticism you've recently gotten, and also not really give you anything catchy enough to make people not care enough and just move on because they like the song. So you had to pick a lane there, and if you ended up not picking either lane and not doing anything cool at all, there's just not a lot here. So yeah, Justin Timberlake, big disappointment. I'm gonna predict the NSYNC comeback probably in like 2026 or something. You know, he's obviously got he's gonna tour this album, arena tour this album. Once that's settled, the NSYNC stuff will probably really pick up. I would not be shocked because obviously the NSYNC guys would love to have that, you know, career revitalization. Despite they've all been successful in their own rights to this point, I'm sure they'd welcome it. And now Timberlake actually kind of needs it. So we'll see. But let me know, did you like this Timberlake album more than me? If so, please let me know why, because I don't see it. And for more music reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. What's up? Welcome to Nostalgia. Dave here with a review of Masters of the Air, the historical drama series from Apple TV Plus, starring Austin Butler and Caleb Turner, also featuring familiar faces like Barry Keoghan and Ncuti Gatwa. Masters of the Air, of course, the follow-up from Playtone and Amblin to Band of Brothers and The Pacific, those shows on HBO, critical and commercial hits in their time. The long-awaited follow-up about Air Force forces in World War II finally happened over at Apple. And Masters of the Air, having watched all 9 episodes, I would say is a solid show. Definitely comes in below Band of Brothers and The Pacific. And I think there's some key reasons for why. But for what this is, which ultimately is very dad-core television, I think it's solid. Ultimately, I think the biggest issue with Masters of the Air, which is completely solid for what it is, but the reason it doesn't really rise beyond being just okay, is that the structure of this series and the subject of it just does not lend itself as well to TV the way the Band of Brothers in the Pacific did. Centering ourselves around pilots in the air going on bombing runs, it's just a lot less visually interesting than boots on the ground. We're not even spending time with fighter pilots. We're spending time with guys in the Flying Fortress bombers. It's just a lot less engaging, and unfortunately, this is a show that really needed to lean on a lot of CGI, unsurprisingly, all these scenes up in the sky. And it's just a lot less, I think, visually interesting. On top of that, with all the guys wearing the breath masks, jumping from bomber plane to bomber plane, we have a hard time really following where we're at. The show also has the unfortunate sin of introducing new characters kind of often as other characters die, even as most of our lead characters make it through unscathed. It's hard to really get connected to a lot of the characters until the show really starts to pick up. I think once we get on the ground more, some of our characters get captured, some other characters die, we start spending time with someone else like Rosie. I think that's when the show starts to really shine as best it can, but it also makes the unfortunate mistake of introducing the Tuskegee Airmen in the penultimate episode and kind of really tokenizing them on the show in the same way they were kind of sidelined in the war itself. I enjoy spending time with Austin Butler and Caleb Turner as leads. I think Butler still kind of giving you a bit of Elvis voice. This show was filmed in 2021, unsurprising. It's a great look for Turner, right on the heels of Boys in the Boat, now dating Dua Lipa. That guy's doing great for himself. Barry Keoghan also in the show, who, following the Saltburn exposure, he's obviously grown a lot more famous, but I kind of had a feeling that he would die early, of course, dying in episode 3 when his plane crashes. I kind of had a feeling that would happen because they kind of tipped their hand when he didn't promote the show to the same degree as Turner and Butler did. The Tuskegee stuff, though, really is a bummer because you have Ncuti Gatwa in there, who's only gotten more famous and only become more of a rising star following Sex Education. Now seeing him in Barbie, he's the new Doctor Who. And he's not even the lead Tuskegee pilot. He's one of the other guys. But the Tuskegee guys, they really have nothing to do at all. And they're just kind of there on the side. And yes, they're being historically accurate in how they're portraying the segregation of the military at the time. But it just kind of feels like a half-assed, hand-wavy inclusion, to be honest. Once the characters get captured, though, I think the stakes get a lot more interesting. So the interrogation scene that Bucky Egan does with one of the Nazis in episode 6, I thought that was pretty interesting. They kind of do a dumb fake out with Austin Butler's Buck character, where it's pretty clear he would not die off screen, but they pretend that he did for 2 episodes. It's okay. Yeah, the time progression also is kind of interesting. There's like an inconsistent use of title cards. You have Anthony Boyle's narration kind of dictating most of the series. But yeah, honestly, I enjoyed the show most when we weren't up in the plane, just because, again, it just was not visually interesting. And I guess it got a bit repetitive. We kind of watched the same motions happen. And after you do that a few more times, it's kind of whatever. Notably, I think to me, the shifts in quality, the improvements in quality on this show largely are in sync with as the directors of the episodes change. You've started with Cary Fukunawa, into Annabelle and Ryan Fleck, also Dee Reese. It got more interesting as the Helmer of the series changed. There's some pretty rousing stuff when guys are getting freed from the camps or trying to escape, but ultimately it's not like a show with like amazing dialogue per se. There's nothing like super pump you up about any of the speeches, so I guess I was a little let down by Butler on this show. I just wanted more. I wanted more flash, but his character Buck Clevin is kind of more even keeled, So it's just fine. Of course, you see all the articles about will there be a season 2 of Masters of the Air? I don't know how that would make a lick of sense, given that this show took us through the end of the war. You could do a anthology treatment of the concept of Masters of the Air and either go way back to the beginning of the war and do some with some RAF pilots, or go to Vietnam with helicopter pilots. I don't know, but I think we've kind of seen the extent of what the Playtone Amblin military shows can be, and I don't know if I'd want another one of these unless it's on the ground, because ultimately these are shows that require lavish budgets, lavish productions, and if you're not going to really buy in and do them super well, I think we can just kind of leave this fair to movies, to be honest. But yeah, Masters of the Air, I'm not disappointed by it, but I'm also not wowed by it either. Let me know, though, how'd you feel about the series? And for more TV reviews, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.
What's up? Welcome back to Nostalgia. Dave here with my 2025 Oscar predictions. Of course, the 2024 Oscars are done. Oppenheimer, of course, dominated. We got to think about who will win next year. Of course, these are the early predictions, the initial forecasting. Tons of movies will surely bubble up that are not being thought of right now. Lest we think about this past year, no one was talking about Anatomy of a Fall this far in advance. And look what happened with that movie. So looking ahead, I'm really going to go through a few dozen, prospective Oscar contenders, movies that are plausible to be nominated for various types of Oscars, whether that's contending for Best Picture or something down the line. And I'm going to kind of categorize them into two areas. The really high-profile movies, and then the probably less famous but more conventional awards type movies. And I'll also note a few movies that probably won't be releasing for this Oscars, but if they did, would certainly be in the mix. So let's just kind of jump into it here. Of course, leave a comment. Let me know what you think is most likely to contend at next year's Oscars. Let me know which of these you're most anticipating. I'm anticipating many of them. But yeah, let's just jump right in. So obviously, Dune Part 2 stands out as a big contender next year. Now, whether it's actually going to win Best Picture and run it up in that to that degree, hard to say. But Dune Part 1, several nominations, including Best Picture. Denis Villeneuve was in the mix for Best Director. I think a lot of that's very plausible once again. Tons of technical categories, certainly up for nomination. I mean, if anything, Dune's probably the favorite to win many of the technical categories, whether that's cinematography or sound or visual effects, production design, costume design. There's a long list. Do I think anyone's certainly in the mix for acting nominations? It's hard to say. It really depends on the rest of the year shakes out. I mean, Timmy and Zendaya, as much as I love them, probably won't be able to contend. Javier Bardem, perhaps supporting, is the most likely. Stilgar, Lassana Gaib, almost a comedic nomination in a sense. That would be awesome. Probably best not to project it, but I would certainly root for it. But yeah, Dune Part 2 kind of makes sense. It'll be there for sure. To what degree is kind of the question, and whether it ends up winning Best Picture, or this is kind of viewed as more of like a Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers situation, where the crowning and the celebration happens with the third film. In this case, the third Dune film, which we know is coming at some point. Hard to say, but it'll certainly be nominated. In terms of the other big stuff, I think there's certainly a drop-off from here, but Furiosa, a Mad Max saga, George Miller's follow-up to Mad Max Fury Road, a prequel, of course, starring Anya Taylor-Joy, that cannot be overlooked for the Oscars because, of course, Mad Max Fury Road, much like Dune Part 1, was a huge dominating force, in below-the-line categories at the Oscars back in 2015. And, Fury Road ran it up and had several wins. I would expect Furiosa, assuming it's up to the same standard as Fury Road, that the trend would continue. So we should keep that in mind. Also should note Joker 2, Joker Folie Dieu, from Todd Phillips, starring Joaquin Phoenix, Lady Gaga now in the mix. We cannot overlook that movie because, of course, the first Joker was nominated for Best Picture. Joaquin won for Best Actor. I'm not expecting the same degree of success, but it certainly should not be overlooked. I also don't think we should overlook Ridley Scott's Gladiator 2, whatever that ends up being titled. Paul Mescal, Denzel Washington, Pedro Pascal. Gladiator 1, of course, wins Best Picture, one of the more dominant Oscar movies of the last, 20 plus years.
Am I expecting the same success for Gladiator 2? No. Am I very much anticipating that movie? Absolutely. I think it's going to be good. I'm really excited about it, and I would not be shocked if that gets some nominations. Now, whether it can be like a Best Picture nominee, like a Top Gun Maverick was for Paramount a few years ago, probably not, but it'll certainly be in the mix. Also, big movie, John Chu's Wicked Part 1, starring Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande. Really hard to say how that one's going to go. We have to know how good the movie is, for starters. But musicals sometimes can break through, and it'll certainly be one of the biggest movies of the year. Also, we should note on the animated front, there's a few high-profile movies. Of course, Pixar's Inside Out 2, coming out in just a few months, and also Disney's Moana 2, whatever that's being titled, at the end of the year. And also from DreamWorks, The Wild Robot. So we don't have a Miyazaki Studio Ghibli movie this year. We don't have a Spider-Verse movie, but we do have, I think, those three, which are still some pretty heavy hitters in the animated category. And Inside Out 2, who knows? Could that get nominated for Best Picture? Probably not, but Toy Story 3 did. You never know. And then in just kind of the below-the-line category, specifically leaning towards visual effects, we should note a few blockbusters. Deadpool and Wolverine, Godzilla x Kong New Empire, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and also perhaps Lee Isaac Chung's Twisters. So overall, due to the strikes, it's a slower, svelter year for the blockbuster. So it's going to be a less populous Oscars, I'm almost certain. We don't have Oppenheimer and Barbie to carry us through the way we did last year, which was truly a great movie year. But I think with Dune Part 2 in particular, and also perhaps stuff like Gladiator 2, Joker 2, Inside Out 2, Furiosa, there'll still be some big movies in the mix. But that kind of does it for the big movies. Now we got to go to the smaller stuff that's probably more traditional when it comes to thinking about what awards movies, what Oscar contending movies that we think of. A movie I'm very much anticipating would be Steve McQueen's Blitz, starring Saoirse Ronan and Harris Dickinson, of course, about the bombing of Britain. And, Saoirse Ronan needs no introduction to the Oscar follower. She's been nominated many times despite her young age. Steve McQueen, of course, has filmed 12 Years a Slave, wins Best Picture. Harris Dickinson, a rising talent. That's a movie I think we can lock in for some nominations. Another film I think it's pretty close to locking in for some nominations would be Conclave from Edward Berger, the German director, his follow-up to All Quiet on the Western Front, which won several awards for Netflix 2 years ago. This has a November 1st release from Focus, very much being positioned as that type of movie with Ray Fiennes and Stanley Tucci and John Lithgow in the mix. Sounds really good as well, about a papal conclave situation, fictional one. So I'm very excited about that one. Got to remember the international voting body, the international representation at the Film Academy definitely puts their weight behind some international filmmakers. So I think a film like Conclave will have a lot of juice for it come this fall. Bong Joon-ho's Mickey 17, I would have thought would be in this mix too. Again, Bong, international filmmaker, his last film won Best Director, won Best Picture, The Great Parasite, of course. But Mickey 17 was delayed out of March 2024, which I thought was a fine idea. I was like, all right, they'll delay it to the fall. It'll premiere at one of the upcoming festivals. Makes sense. Film starring Robert Pattinson. But then Warner Brothers delays it all the way to January of next year, which almost feels like it's being taken out of the awards mix. It's very weird what's going on with Mickey 17, so I really don't know what to say about how they're going to treat the movie. We hope and demand that they do release this movie. Obviously, we can't be too certain with the Zaslav Warner Brothers era. But yeah, Mickey 17, kind of an odd one, unfortunately. We should note The Bike Riders, another film delayed out of last year from Jeff Nichols, starring Austin Butler, Tom Hardy in the mix. I don't know if it's going to be a true Oscar contender, but you never know. Also coming out in the middle of the year would be Yorgos Lanthimos' new film, Kinds of Kindness, with Emma Stone in the mix. Now, this is an anthology film, so I wonder if the Yorgos juice and the Emma Stone juice, of course, reiterated to us once again, Emma winning her second Best Actress, and Yorgos continuing to be an Oscar stalwart, international director as well, a lot of support for him. Kinds of Kindness being an anthology, I'm not sure exactly how strong it'll be come award season. Really hard to get a feel for that this far out, but you can't ignore it. Also, Francis Ford Coppola's Megalopolis might be coming out this year. Adam Driver and a whole bunch of other people are in it. Might be Coppola's last film ever. Again, we have no idea what that's going to be like. A lot of his late period films are not very good as well. So certainly got to note it, but you cannot bank on it. That's for sure. We have not one but two Luca Guadagnino movies coming out. Of course, Challengers, delayed out last year, starring Zendaya, Mike Faist, and Josh O'Connor. Very excited about that one. That one might not be as awards friendly, though, as his other film, Queer, starring Daniel Craig. So we'll see what happens with the Luca movies. Uh, the film that premiered at Toronto last year, Sing Sing, starring Coleman Domingo, that one seems very likely to be in the mix here. Coleman Domingo's performance was celebrated in that movie as well. Of course, he got nominated for Rustin at this past year. It sounds like the wagons will continue to circle around Coleman Domingo, who's just so well liked. He's so charismatic, and of course, he's so great as a lead performer as well. So I would not be shocked if at least his acting performance gets recognized for Sing Sing. I just want to shout out Back to Black, the Amy Winehouse biopic coming up soon, starring Marissa Bella. You never know how if that one's really good, a la the Elvis film. Who's to say? Could get through. I'd also like to acknowledge A Real Pain from Jesse Eisenberg with Eisenberg and Kieran Culkin. This film premiered to rapturous response at Sundance just 2 months ago. And, might say, oh, Sundance not traditionally an Oscar contending, launch pad, except last year, that's where Past Lives began its journey, one of the best movies of the year. So I don't think we can count out A Real Pain. I want to note Pedro Almodovar's first English film, The Room Next Door, with Tilda Swinton, Julianne Moore, and John Turturro. Last time Almodovar made a film was Parallel Mothers. Penelope Cruz got a nomination for that. Alice Garland's Civil War, I just want to acknowledge it because Garland's one of the unique filmmakers we have. I don't think it's an awards contender, though. It definitely seems to be more action-leaning. The Apprentice, a film about Donald Trump, Sebastian Stan playing the man, Jeremy Strong playing Roy Cohn. You also have Maria Bakalova in the film. I have no idea if that's an awards movie. Maybe a nomination for a performer. Who's to say? We have no idea how good that's going to be either. Certainly, that's a movie that could go either way in terms of reception to it, obviously. We don't know much about this one, but Andrea Arnold's film Bird, starring Barry Keoghan from A24. A lot of juice behind Keoghan these days, should be noted. There's a boxing film coming out from Rachel Morrison with a script by Barry Jenkins. The film's called Flint Strong, starring a newcomer, Ryan Destiny, who could be a breakthrough performer, in the mix for those kinds of awards, but supporting performance from Brian Tyree Henry, and we know how great he is, so keep an eye on that one. Pablo Larraín has another movie coming out, Maria, starring Angelina Jolie. Of course, his last film, El Conde, kind of got a surprise cinematography nomination over at Netflix last year, so we'll see what happens with Larraín. He's been pretty serviceable and consistent at getting awards attention for his films. Look back on, like, Jackie, for example. Paolo Sorrentino has a new film, Parthenope. We don't know too much about it yet. I believe Gary Oldman is in that, but, between Almodovar and Sorrentino and Guadagnino and Bong Joon-ho and Yorgos Lanthimos, that's a lot of international filmmakers that are already on the radar, to say nothing of the filmmakers and films that we don't really have an eye on just yet. The Piano Lesson, another August Wilson film adaptation. This one has Samuel L. Jackson and Danielle Deadwyler and John David Washington in the mix. Again, produced by Denzel Washington, directed by his son Malcolm Washington, and of course starring his other more famous son, John David Washington. Look back at Fences a few years ago for similar Oscar, and award success for a August Wilson adaptation featuring Denzel Washington. This one's pretty exciting to me. We Live in Time, John Crowley's new film. Of course, John Crowley gave us Brooklyn, back in 2015. Then he also gave us The Goldfinch, which we don't have to talk about. But this stars Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh. Need I say more? Also, we should note Richard Linklater's upcoming film Hitman, starring Glenn Powell, which will be on Netflix. Really rapturously received. It's coming out earlier in the year. I'm not sure exactly how awards contendery it'll be. Linklater's certainly up and down in terms of breaking through with contention and that sort of thing. So I guess it depends on how much of a campaign Netflix wants to run for it. So yeah, that's a ton of films right there that are immediately on the radar, but there's obviously stuff that we don't yet foresee. So yeah, that's a bunch of films already on the radar, and of course more to come that we don't yet foresee. And then just some other movies that people might be thinking about that are not going to be in the Oscar mix this year. You have Paul Thomas Anderson's next film with Leonardo DiCaprio. That was dated for late 2025, so it's not this Oscar year. Quentin Tarantino's the movie critic that hasn't started filming, so almost certainly will not be contending this year. Noah Baumbach's recently announced Netflix film almost assuredly will not be out in time. Same for the Wes Anderson film that he's filming right now. He doesn't really rush out his movies. Think about the gap between French Dispatch and Asteroid City. He usually takes his time with these. Similarly, Ari Aster's just announced film Eddington almost assuredly will not be out in time. But Let me know which of these movies are you most anticipating, which do you think will most likely contend for Oscars, whether it's the big ones or the small ones, and what do you most want to see? And for more movie reviews, Oscar predictions, awards predictions, not just the Oscars, but the Grammys and the Emmys too, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.
All right, that's going to do it for the pod this week. Next week, we have Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, the latest film in the reboot of Ghostbusters. Interesting to see how that goes. Also on Netflix, we have the Shirley Chisholm biopic film starring Regina King. And then some new music, the debut album from Tyla following that breakout hit single Water. New album from Matt Champion, formerly of Brockhampton. New album from Empress of. Oh, and got to talk about the Roadhouse reboot with Jake Gyllenhaal and Conor McGregor out on Amazon Prime Video. And Netflix's Three Body Problem, the big sci-fi series adaptation from Benioff and Weiss, their follow-up to Game of Thrones. I'm going to try and get to that. We'll see how much I can get to, but that'll be coming up soon. So make sure you subscribe. YouTube.com/nostalgiapod. Linktree.com/nostalgiapod. See the links below. Get the Spotify post. Let me know it's good, and I'll see you next week.